I recently had my first Leica experience. I used the Leica SL and it was an absolute pleasure. So when Leica contacted me about trying another camera, I jumped at the chance. Now the SL is a larger Leica. It's unlike most of their other cameras in terms of size and shape. So I wanted to try something that was more traditionally Leica in its styling. I have here the Leica CL. It is a crop sensor rangefinder style body. It's not a brand new body, it's about a year old, but it's still a viable option when looking at cameras today. On it, I have the Summilux-TL 35mm f1.4 lens. It's an incredible combination. It's not too big, it still has some weight to it, but it is a dream to use. I know you want more details though, and you want to see photos, so let's jump into it. I was happy to see that the menu system was similar to the Leica SL, so it was easy for me to pick this up and use it right away. I was used to the general structure and the terminology. Speaking of menus, I should mention here that I did share a video where I shared how I set this up for a trip to the museum. I'll put a link to that up above. But back to this review. Let me discuss the body for a minute. Like I mentioned before, it is a rangefinder style body, so it doesn't have a grip on it. However, it remains easy to hold on to because of the material that's all the way around the body. I found that all of the buttons are easy to get to even when I have the camera up to my eye. Speaking of buttons, there aren't a ton of them. In true Leica style, there are only 3 buttons to the side of the rear LCD screen, along with the directional buttons on the other side, and 2 button and dial combinations on the top of the camera. It's simple, which is in line with what I expect from Leica. Simplicity while maintaining usability. Now that being said, the settings adjustments that you can make without going into the menus is limited, even if you customize the buttons and dials that are on the body. So depending on how you like to shoot, this may be an issue for you. I'll get back to that later though. Leica cameras are definitely works of art in and of themselves. They're incredibly well made as well. They're very solid and always sleek. They aren't the lightest of cameras, but they are robust. And the CL is no exception, and the lens too. Both inspire confidence. So it's great that the camera feels good in your hands, but that doesn't really matter if the image quality isn't any good. But as I would expect from a Leica camera and lens, the image quality is stellar. I mentioned before that the CL is a crop sensor camera. It has a 24 megapixel sensor, and I realize in this day and age that full frame with lots of pixels is popular. But it isn't necessary for everyone. Crop sensor with 24 megapixels will more than do the job for most people. Even at higher ISO sensitivities, I saw good image quality. And even when grain is introduced, as the ISO gets higher, it is still aesthetically pleasing. Let's talk about this lens here for a moment. The 35mm on a crop sensor body gives me roughly a 50mm equivalent field of view. It is not a lightweight or compact lens, but it doesn't get in my way either. There are other L-mount lenses that are smaller, but the quality of this lens is amazing. Even at f1.4, the images are crisp. And that isn't the case with all lenses in my experience. Often when shooting wide open, the image quality suffers. You'll end up with a soft image, but not a problem here. Zooming in, you'll still maintain crispness. The Leica's autofocus isn't super speedy. This isn't a fast action camera. However, it is accurate, and I have several options for how to make it behave, including face detect, and I will get more into that when we discuss video. Getting back to overall image quality. You may have heard about the Leica look. I don't think that I could always pick out a Leica image like out of a lineup, but I definitely have noticed after using a couple of them that there is a certain way that colors and light are handled. Images are crisp and smooth at the same time. They have a painterly feel to me, and the images from the CL definitely fit into that. Now there are a lot of things that you can do in post-processing with any camera to change how the colors look. However, the Leica does all of that out of the box. And for someone like me who does not particularly like to sit in front of the computer editing images, I appreciate that. Let's move on to video. The CL can shoot at 4K at 30 frames per second, but you can also shoot at 1080p at up to 60 frames per second, which is what I experimented with. Of course, quality of the video is excellent, that's no surprise. I was also happy with autofocus with face detection during filming as well. It found faces every time and it kept them during filming, even when the person looked down or turned to the side. Now, I mentioned before that autofocus in general isn't super fast, and that is true during video as well. However, I also mentioned that autofocus is accurate, and it's also smooth and quiet. Okay, before I wrap this up, we need to address cost. It goes without saying that this camera and lens are pricey. There are links to them down in the description below if you want to see how much they are where you live. And if you aren't interested in spending that kind of money, that's cool. This just isn't the setup for you. But there are a great many people who are willing to spend the premium for the superb build quality and image quality, that Leica look, if you will. These are cameras that are built to last. They are meant to be used for decades rather than be replaced every couple of years. So this is the bottom line. This camera is a joy to shoot when you just want to kind of set it and forget it, or at least set most of it and forget it. If you're someone who likes to have lots of buttons and dials on the body to be able to make all sorts of adjustments on the fly, then this probably isn't the camera for you. It really shines in those kind of lower pressure situations where you're just enjoying yourself with the camera. Well, that's it. I am sending this setup back to Leica this afternoon. And like the SL, I am sad to see it go. There's just something about using a Leica that I truly enjoy. I think for me, it just kind of promotes a more mindful way of photography, and I'm still achieving the image quality that I need for my work. If you want to know more about the CL or the 35mm f1.8 lens, check out those links in the description below. And thanks for watching, everyone.